We'll begin by announcing the committee will receive and file items 1 through 7 and also item 17. At this time, we will go to items 8 and 9.
And item number 8 is a communication from the city attorney and a resolution relative to a request to destroy certain obsolete records from the city clerk election division. And at the same time, item number 9 is also communication from the city attorney and a resolution relative to a request to destroy records from the Human Relations Commission.
1 to 7 and 17?
Yeah, 1 to 7 and 17. Receive and file those. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Todd Godowski, Records Management Officer for the City Clerk's Office. We have 2 requests to destroy obsolete records. Both records are obsolete. The department and the city attorney have reviewed and recommended the destruction of the documents. They're from the City Clerk's Election Division. They're over 2 years old. And we also have a box of records from the former Human Relations Commission, which is several years old and not needed for operational reasons.
Okay. And you're speaking on behalf of the city attorney's office?
We don't have a representative here prepared to speak on this.
Okay, so as far as the legal requirements and the process for making this recommendation, that's been satisfied?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, after the city clerk reviewed it for administrative and historical content, the city attorney reviewed it and attached their recommendation.
Okay. Are there any exemptions in the process on these 2 items?
No.
Okay, so you follow through with all of the required steps. Is there anybody here to speak on items 8 and 9? I do not see any public comment cards on items 8 and 9. Public comment is open on items 8 and 9. Seeing and hearing no one come forward, public comment on items 8 and 9 are now closed. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing and hearing no questions from the committee, the actions are to approve the city attorney's report on item 8 and 9. Thank you. Okay. At this time, we'll now go to item 10.
And item number 10 is a report from the Department of General Services relative to modification of a lease with Tom Gilmore and Associates for an art gallery and cultural space at 256 to 264 South Main Street.
Okay. On this item, are we hearing this item because this is the initial lease or this is a technical matter?
This is a technical correction or a request to modify the lease and change the lessee's name from Gilmore Associates to Tom Gilmore and Associates LLC and Pharmaca Art Gallery to just Tom Gilmore and Associates LLC.
Okay. So it's a technical amendment to the contract which has nothing to do with the substance of the contract other than the legal name.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
The dollar a square foot for a 5-year term, has there been an analysis what property is going for in that area with the revamping of downtown?
Yes, we did. This was in response to a request for proposal, and we had only Tom Gilmer and Associates respond to the proposal. So they offered $1, but we had a study that it's at an amount higher than $1, around $2.
So it should rent for around $2, we'll rent it for $1?
Correct.
Why?
They're the only proposal that we received.
Why
at the
didn't we go
time.
reach out for more people?
It was actually a second RFP that we sent out, and we went out and did a community outreach to all the art galleries that we have in the neighborhood, as well as other art groups, and
It just seems that
no one
we would
responded.
want to market it at a higher value if it's going for $2 a square foot versus $1 a square foot, since that area is being revamped and a number of restaurants, a number of other businesses are coming into that area, and if it's appraised at $2, and Mr. Gilmore is the only one who's bidding it, maybe we need to market something else there and get $2 or more so we can help the funds of the city of Los Angeles. I just question why we're doing something for half what it would go for, and whatever we market it, maybe it's not meant to be an art gallery, maybe it's meant to be something else.
Well, to put it into perspective, when an appraisal is done, that is a hypothetical value. The true value of property, real estate property in this country is what the market is willing to pay. The fact that they went out twice to try to lease this space out, and the fact that on the second round they only received one proposal at $1 a square foot, what that shows that there was an anomaly in the appraisal, and that the appraisal was not the true market value. And the reason why I say that, I would love to get $2 a square foot if it's appraised for $2 a square foot. However, at the same time, to leave the property empty is also something that's a detriment to the city as well, because we have the maintenance costs and all those factors, so we end up going backwards. So on that note, any other?
Well,
I just want,
Go ahead.
just want to briefly,
Name,
Reggie
record.
Jones Sawyer, Department of General Services. The councilwoman of the district was really concerned that it be an art gallery, and the councilwoman of the district wanted us, you had a question of why didn't we rent it as something else.
Does this councilwoman have a name?
Councilwoman Jan Perry of the 9th District wanted it to be an art gallery, and as we went out, we didn't get, as was said before, we didn't get a whole lot of takers for it to be an art gallery, except for Mr. Gilmore.
Did you get takers for other businesses at that location?
We were only instructed to go out for an art gallery.
How many other art galleries are around there?
That I don't know. I know there's several on 2nd Street. It's a hub of the art.
Excuse me, Reggie, most of the art galleries are from privately owned property. There are dozens now in that area. This is now the area of what they call the Art Walk. The Art Walk started off with a few hundred people on the, what is it, the third Thursday of the month or something like that?
I believe so.
In the afternoons. My kids go to it. They have me take them all the time. So I witnessed it go from a handful of hundreds of people there to tens of thousands of people through the evening. So it is now an attraction. However, I happened to be there yesterday having lunch and walking down the street, and I noticed there's a restaurant called Bermuda that is right smack in the middle of the Art Walk, and they've closed down. There is another space that I was eating, and next door a woman was showing an empty space to somebody that looked like, I'm a former realtor, it looked like a person wasn't looking to lease it out permanently. They just wanted to lease it out like on a daily basis. So the fact of the matter is, again, when you look at an appraisal, we should always do appraisals, but unfortunately, there are anomalies that the appraisals don't take into account. And the reality is, a property is only worth what the market is willing to pay. And so there's still a lot of struggle going on, and for us to have once or twice a month 30,000 people trafficking that area, that doesn't satisfy the other 28 days out of the month where these people have to make ends meet and actually make the rent. So I'm not defending specifically this particular
Well, here's the
site.
councilwoman, maybe she can explain.
We're talking about item 10. I'm not defending specifically this lease, but I think it's important that we shed some light on the fact that an appraisal is a paper opinion, but it's really not the final truth. The truth of the matter is, a property is only worth what somebody's willing to pay.
Well, it depends what you're going to lease it for. Anyway, the question was, Ms. Perry, regarding the number 10, and if we had done an evaluation to see if we could get more rent than $1 a square foot, and it was explained regarding the focus of an art gallery, and the question was, if we used it for another purpose, could we receive more compensation
Well, the
than an
problem
art gallery?
is that we went through a competitive process, and the person who was the company that was awarded the opportunity to have this lease and did it in response to an RFP process. So we, the city, solicited these bids, and then we, the city, decided whom to select, and as part of that, we made a commitment to the community for the Motor Transport Division to be located where it is, to create some neighborhood-serving amenities at the street level, and that was part of our agreement in order to get the support of the community in that area, in that media area, in the surrounding area, to support the project and not oppose it. So we made a commitment.
Okay.
And,
See, I didn't know that part.
yeah, well, that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, thank
So,
you.
thank you for shedding light on these other mitigating factors.
You are welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee on item 10? Is there anybody here from the public to speak on item number 10? Item number 10 is now open for public comment. Seeing no one come forward, there are no cards before me on item 10 for public comment. Public comment is now closed. Once again, this is a technical change to the contract. The contract was approved in 2009, and so therefore, it's the action of the committee to approve the GSD report. Thank you. We are now on item number 11.
And item number 11 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to support and/or sponsorship of legislation or administrative action to provide funding to extend the Marvin Browdy Bike Path pursuant to Resolution Rosendahl-Koretz.
Good afternoon, Annie Gino from the CLA's office. The Marvin Browdy Bike Path is a 19-mile bike route starting at Will Rogers Beach and ending in the city of Torrance. Throughout the years, efforts have been made to extend the bike path for 2 miles from Temescal Canyon Road to the city's western boundary at Coastline Drive. In 1995, the city requested construction funding in the amount of $5,232,000 from MTA's call for projects. However, MTA rejected this request, stating that the proposed extension was recreational rather than transportation-related and thus not eligible for federal transportation funding. Since then, in 2008, the city's Bureau of Engineering evaluated the proposed extension and has provided a cost estimate of approximately $30 million. On January 22, 2010, a resolution was introduced recommending legislation in support of federal funding for the proposed extension, and the CLA concurs with this recommendation, and we have a DOT representative available if you have any specific questions.
Okay. So what we have before us is to adopt a resolution so that we can continue to try to find the funding source.
Correct.
Or secure a funding source. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no questions from the committee, we are on item number 11. Is there any public comment on item number 11? I do not have any public comment cards before me on item number 11. Oh, yes, we do. I'm sorry. Thank you. George Wolfberg. Okay. Please.
Chairman, George Wolfberg. I'm the president of the Santa Monica Canyon Civic Association. We're at one end of the where the bike path just ends, and I'm also a member of the board of the Pacific Palisades Community Council. Both those organizations unanimously approve this project. It has been under consideration for many years, and back to 2001, I have a information release that we put out at that time, and I thought I would read just part of a paragraph for context. According to Community Council Vice Chair and cyclist Ted Mackey, cycling south past the Bel Air Bay Club is a terrifying experience. The PCH shoulder suddenly vanishes, leaving a cyclist in heavy, fast-moving traffic. I have biked from San Francisco to San Diego, and passing the Bel Air Bay Club is the scariest point of the whole 600 miles. Any hope of encouraging bicycle commuting from the Palisades and Malibu hangs on eliminating this choke point.
And that's what this would do, eliminate those choke points?
Yes, it would. It would also provide continuing the path from the parking lot to the Getty Malibu, which is called the Getty, it's in Los Angeles, the Getty Villa.
Okay.
And there are, despite what Metro has said and was quoted earlier by the CLA, the community did a survey and found that a significant proportion of the people using this heavily traveled bike path are actually commuting. Let me add one final comment.
Sure.
In 1999, my wife and I did a survey, public survey, and on the beach, and we found, and this we were kind of stunned. We found out that the people that we surveyed came from 32 different zip codes. So this is a broad attraction from throughout the community.
Thank you. So you support it?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for enlightening us of those facts. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Anybody else here to make public comment on item number 11? Seeing none, item number 11, public comment is now closed. So with that, it's the action of this committee to support the resolution. We now move to item number 12.
And item number 12 is a report from the Department of General Services in response to motion Gruhl-Rosendahl relative to the collection of accident data from event data recorders on city vehicles involved in accidents.
Leonard Walker, the Department of General Services. I wanted to give you a brief background on the event data recorders on vehicles within the city of Los Angeles. GSD created a report dated January 12th in regards to event data recorders. We were asked by this committee to check to see what vehicles in the fleet actually have event data recorders. We did that information. We've placed a policy in place in regards to protecting that data in case of an accident where there's a major injury or fatality. There's approximately 65% of the vehicles in the fleet that would have these devices on it. The challenges have been the volatility of the information, making sure that the vehicles are properly protected once they're involved in an accident, towed to the facility, and actually quarantined so that a expert or a accident reconstructionist expert can pull that data from the vehicles. LAPD is also here, and they have a policy that they've put in place effective back in August 2008. So anytime there's an accident, they're the first responders there, and if you have questions, I'll be more than willing to answer those.
So what exactly are these EDRs? I mean, it's a black box. What is it?
Actually, they've been coined that, but they're not black boxes like you would think of as in an aircraft. What they are, they're actually a computer, and what they do, they actually control the engine functions, and there's also a computer for the airbag module. If a vehicle has an airbag in it, if the airbag is deployed, there's actually data that's captured, such as speed, whether the seat belt is fastened, whether there was a panic braking action. So all this data is recorded, and really what it's meant to do for accident reconstructionists, insurance companies, and that have an interest in that data to make sure vehicles are safe on the highway. So the National Highway Safety Transportation Administration administers policies in regards to that.
Well, how much is one of these devices?
Actually, there's no cost involved. They're actually original equipment. They come on the car, and they're not an option. It's not something you can buy and install on the car. They come.
So which vehicles are they standard on?
They're standard on a lot of the sedans. In 2008, they did a survey, and about 65% of the vehicles had these event data recorders in them at that time, and they estimate today that all the new vehicles that are on the road today would have those on them. But there's it's still, the technology is in its infancy stages, and as there's no format in place today, but manufacturers that do voluntarily install them on their vehicles have to meet certain guidelines in 2013. So really, we're kind of ahead of the curve here in terms of actually using the data. A few of the vehicles you cannot retrieve the information. There's no tools available to do it. You have to actually take the computers out and request, like for Toyota and Honda, for them to retrieve that information, but they're not providing it unless there's a court order, and they may not do it then, or a judge requests that information.
And if there is a court order, for example, you mentioned Toyota, do they charge us for it, or they just provide it as a service?
I'm not sure. I believe for law enforcement, they probably would not charge for that information.
They can do it when they fix the accelerator.
Well, that's why they only want to do it under a court order. But, so whose unit does that belong to? Should we turn it over to Toyota? That information in there, does it belong to the purchaser of the vehicle, or does it belong to the manufacturer?
I would like the city attorney to answer that question.
Yes. Good afternoon, Philip Sugar, City Attorney's Office. Where we interface with this is obviously when a city vehicle is involved in an accident, there's a major injury, there can be a death. We need the information so that we can evaluate the dynamics of the accident.
Some of the dynamics.
Some of
Right?
them
Doesn't tell the whole story, but some of.
It all depends on the type of module there and what type of data there can be. Sometimes it may well just be, was the airbag deployed, which may or may not be terribly helpful to us. We usually need to know speed. I mean, that's usually the issue. What was the position of the steering wheel? What gear was the vehicle in? And primarily, what was the speed of the vehicle? What we've been doing is when we are notified by the department or the skid team, we send out a member of the staff there and we try to get the information downloaded. Problem, of course, we have, it's very hard to get the information downloaded on scene. So the vehicles then are towed to a location, and then at some point we will hire somebody, an outside engineer, an outside accident reconstructionist, to come and download that information. We have to do it very quickly because in most of these, as I understand it, once you turn the ignition on, once you put it in the drive, once you move the vehicle, a lot of that data is erased. Now, I don't know that that's generally true across the board, but in a lot of the accidents that we've seen, such as in a trash truck, the data is erased as soon as the vehicle is moved. So we're hiring outside people. They're coming and downloading the information. If there's litigation, then the plaintiff's side will hire a similar expert. We'll all download the information together and then start analyzing that data. So we're primarily concerned with city vehicles, so the data belongs to the city. If it's an independent, a third person's vehicle, then it may well be that we need to get a court order, such as in a criminal case. We may need to get the cooperation of the other side. But generally, we're looking at our own vehicle and our own operators.
Sounds a little sloppy.
It is sloppy in the sense that we don't have, as I understand it, a readily available system for downloading the information on scene, such as, suppose the vehicle, trash truck, police car, general services vehicle, council aids vehicle, not that I'm suggesting that, is in a car crash on the freeway.
Or city attorney vehicle.
I haven't seen any city attorney traffic accidents. No. It is sloppy in the sense that there's a time delay. Vehicles can be blocking traffic. They can be on a freeway. They can be in another jurisdiction. And so that's one of the main hurdles that we're seeing. So I'd have to agree with you that it is sloppy in the sense of retrieving that data promptly. I have no doubt in another 5 or 10 years there'll be data to send this over the airways, and you'll be able to, communicate it through your Bluetooth and BlackBerry and save that data. But at this point, no, I don't think the technology is quite there.
Okay. So it basically helps in some cases with some basic information at the point of the accident. Unfortunately, it sounds like there's a big flaw in the manufacturer's system in the sense that if the ignition is turned, with some of these units, all that information has been erased, unfortunately.
Whether it's a flaw or it's just a limitation in the technology or a limitation in the amount of money that's spent on the particular module, yes. The other side of the coin then is if some of the data is available and then we move the vehicle, it's erased, then the other side can use that against us in trial. And they can argue that we have there's a spoliation of evidence, and that can be very damaging to us. So it's critical in the litigation sense to get as much data as quickly as possible.
Well, that begs the question, should we be advising or making our employees aware who are driving city vehicles that if they are in an accident, do not turn the ignition?
I would think that would be advisable, yes.
And then we would have to go ahead and do that with, you're an attorney, with the caveat that unless absolutely necessary for your safety. You get what I'm saying?
Right. And there's also an evaluation. Is it the type of accident that is, in a sense, worth the time, money, and effort to, isolate the vehicle, get the skid team there? A lot of accidents happen. Skid team is not called. I mean, we have, I couldn't give you the number, but I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of accidents where the skid team's not called out. The vehicles, exchange of information, the vehicles are driven off. So we're looking at the major type of accidents, which of course then turn into major litigation.
So would you say that we still could use some more efforts to improve our internal system of how we can utilize this tool, so to speak, that is available on most modern vehicles that we own?
Can't argue with that.
Okay. And you're a lawyer and you're not going to argue with it? Thank you. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Any other questions from the committee?
Well, back in 2008, the department traffic coordinator from the police department published a memo on this specific subject, signed by Chief Rapoli and Chief Pasinger, outlining the procedure for the event data recorder and the crash data retrieval, and how you have to be a certified technician, etc. My question is, why haven't we trained anybody in the police department to do this?
I don't think I can answer that.
Well, the commander maybe can. Maybe we have people who can do that, since we're now seeing the LAPD arrive in mass.
Right.
These are the stars and stripes.
Good afternoon. Commander Mike Williams for the department, and the duty expert to my left is Officer Beard. And I think, first of all, I think she needs to explain to the council members the limitations of that information.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm Officer Beard. I work for Specialized Collision Investigation Detail. So,
How do you say your name again?
Officer Beard
Beard.
with the Specialized Collision Investigation Detail. Yes, sir. I am a collision reconstructionist, and I have also been through the technician class and the analyst class to be able to download this data from the vehicles with a system called the Crash Data Retrieval System, which is made by Bosch Vitronics.
How many people are trained on the department besides you?
There are one other person who's assigned to the skid team currently, and one person who is not assigned to the skid team anymore.
So 3 folks.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One of the requirements to go to the analyst class, which is once the data is downloaded to actually read the data, you have to be a collision reconstructionist. Because what they recommend and the way the data is supposed to be used is it's only supportive data to an actual reconstruction or situational reconstruction of each collision in itself. So the data is only going to be as good as the other data you get from your complete investigation. One of the main downfalls is each vehicle, not all vehicles are able to be downloaded, depending on the year, make, and model. And each vehicle will actually give different data. Each of the manufacturers give different data from each of their vehicles. There is no standardized download yet. Probably one of the biggest downfalls is the crash data retrieval system itself. It is technology, and it is a business. It is a computerized unit that you hook up to a computer with different cables. Each cable for each different manufacturer costs money. They're almost $100 per cable. Every time a new vehicle comes out, it's a new cable. Every time that there's a subscription update, it's a new cost. Every time that there's an update for the box to download, it's a new cost. Currently, I went through the analyst class in 2007. Since I have not been to a technician course, if I were to go back to an analyst class, which they do recommend every other year, because it is new technology and updated, I would also have to go through the technician class again. So it's approximately $1,000 per person to put through the class, not to mention
Who charges
lodging.
the $1,000?
Bosch Vitronics, whoever puts on the class. The class is offered through Bosch Vitronics because it is their system. And there have not been any in California, so then it's also lodging and travel.
Where do you have to go?
We went to Las Vegas. That was the closest. It was actually North Las Vegas, at one of the police departments there.
So it sounds like the Federal Highway Administration should do something with standardizing the systems, and then some grant to law enforcement traffic divisions to be able to analyze this data.
Yes.
And it sounds like it should be, just like when you go to the gas station, those nozzles are all standard. They fit into the receptacle, the gas tank, et cetera. This sounds like it needs to be standardized in the Fed, since they regulate cars and safety. So you'd have one system. So I think it's in the infancy, but maybe it'd be time for us to do something with the Federal Highway Traffic Administration. Ray LaHood, who is involved in that, he seems to be very proactive to standardize this, because the car manufacturers are putting it in for whatever purpose. We need to somehow standardize it. Now, I was unaware that they even had this system.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people are aware that it even exists.
The systems have existed for quite a long time. The event data recorder is a part of the airbag control module, which is a part of the safety system of the vehicle. One of the other minimal limitations is it doesn't always record. The car's more interested in your safety, and so if it has a choice of deploying your airbag and recording the data, it's going to deploy the airbag.
Well, one of the factors you mentioned is speed, and when they want to look at the speed, is the car going 25 or 50 in a specific area? But it seems like there's got to be some standardization. That seems to be a big gap. And then the training for the officers.
And very few actually give a speed. What they're usually giving is crash data that is analyzed, and it's technically called a delta V, which is a change in time over a change in speed. So it relates to the severity of the crash, which is one of the reasons that you have to do it with a reconstruction.
And they don't include this in the school for the officers that go to that reconstruction.
No, reconstruction in itself is a completely different 2-week course, and there's different levels of reconstruction. This reconstruction is a prerequisite
For the skid team.
to be an analyst for the crash data recorder.
Okay. Well, I know that in liability, when it comes to us in the executive session on city vehicles that are involved, there's always that issue that comes up in the skid team investigation.
Right.
And obviously, this would be another factor that would hopefully defend the city when it needs to be defended.
And we have the computer. Our computer, unfortunately, is out of date. Our cables are out of date. I tried to download a vehicle recently. I had the cable, but I didn't have the power cord, and it was a different power cord that was required. So that's just one example of we can't turn around and spend $100 every time we need a cable or a power cord.
So they has to be standardized. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Well, not only is it sloppy, I think that these data recorders are dumb. They really don't add much, from what I can tell. And I'm sure they could do much better, but for some reason the industry or this one particular company chooses not to. But it sounds like most car manufacturers are using it or installing it.
The car manufacturers, the reason it was designed was for research and development in the vehicles themselves. The car manufacturers, once their cars had been involved in collisions, would download the data and make their cars better. But the car manufacturers are wary to put the information out because the next thing that is going to happen is they're going to be sued.
Sure, there are lawyers out there that might sue them
So,
based on this information.
but it was never meant for this purpose. It was meant for theirs, and we've been able to use it.
And I might add that oftentimes they're very, very protective of that data because of the liability issues and what have you. And hence, they have to go to a search warrant oftentimes to get the data. And sometimes they're not even allowed to get the data. The data is not available.
Sounds like the original intent was really crash data for dummies, literally the crash test dummies, but not for real human being use.
And with a good investigation, you can usually
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It
Put
doesn't
on your
add
face
all
better.
that much value when you look at how rudimentary the information, and the information really isn't all that advanced. Okay. I don't know.
Just one more question, the criteria for skid call-out,
Yes, sir.
the criteria for that.
This criteria for skid call-out is a city liability collision with severe or fatal injuries.
Okay.
It can also be something of very high media or beyond the scope of the officers involved, but for the most part, it's city liability with severe or fatal injuries.
And that's when they do the reconstruction, figure everything.
Yeah, a lot of time and effort into that. Thank you. We'll go to public comment on this item. We're on item number 12. Public comment is open on item number 12. I do not see any public comment cards on item number 12. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 12? Seeing and hearing nobody come forward, public comment on item number 12 is now closed. So with that, we'll continue this item and instruct the clerk. No? Okay. All right. We'll note and file this item. It sounds like the real crux of the matter is that this is a very interesting little system, but something that unfortunately is not within our control to get it to a better place. So we'll just note and file the item.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now on item number 14.
13?
What happened to 13?
We did 13,
Did?
one of the first actions.
Is that consent?
Yeah, consent.
Yeah, that's good.
13 went on consent.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take action on 13 as a consent item now that we have quorum.
Okay, and the action is to approve the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought you had one to 717.
We received and filed 17. We're now on 14.
Okay. And item number 14 is a CLA report and a resolution relative to the city's position to SBX 62 Calderon, which would delay the collection of assessed transient occupancy tax liabilities by allowing for prepayment judicial relief for disputed TOTs.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. And in the course of our review of state legislation, we advised the Office of Finance of the existence of this bill. Finance reviewed the bill and submitted a report concerning a position to oppose SBX 62. And we have processed a report and submitted a resolution for your consideration to oppose this bill. It has the potential to delay the collection of assessed TOT liabilities, thus negatively impacting the city's revenues. In addition, litigation action may increase as taxpayers would have the ability to take court action against the city without incurring revenue outlays for assessed TOT. Larry Minocchio with the Office of Finance is here to answer any questions you may have about this bill.
So basically, should this pass, the proprietor, or shall I say the hotel owner, could withhold the tax if they feel that there's some kind of dispute they'd like to engage in?
When dealing through an intermediary, the actual payment from the user goes directly to the intermediary.
Like in an escrow account? So
Right.
Okay.
So I don't believe that can actually be done. I think any dispute that the city may have would be with the intermediary.
Okay. So what is this bill attempting to solve, if you were to speculate that there was a reason for this bill?
Well, it's allowing the intermediary to contest any assessment or liability for TOT without having to pay the tax first, and then litigate second, which is the current California law. If this bill passes, it could potentially advance litigation in that without first paying the assessed liability, it removes a significant hurdle that the taxpayers currently face. As John was saying, it will delay the revenue stream of TOT to the city. Currently, through the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we've averaged $10 million a month in TOT. So potentially this would delay the city receiving that money in the event of a dispute. And also should be noted that TOT is a user's tax, and that is the city's money, as opposed to a business tax or a fee that may be disputed.
Any questions? Okay. All right. Is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 14? Seeing and hearing no one come forward, I do not have any public comment cards on item 14 before me. With that, public comment is closed on item number 14, and it is the action of this committee to approve the CLA report to this resolution, which is to oppose SDX 62. Thank you. We now move to item number 15.
And item number 15 is a CLA report relative to the city's position for the Local Taxpayer Public Safety and Transportation Protection Act of 2010 pursuant to Resolution Garcetti-Cardenas.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Reef with the CLA's office. The California League of Cities has proposed a ballot initiative on the November ballot that would prevent the state from accessing local funds. There's an extensive history of the state taking or borrowing local funds. Recent activities include $2 billion in borrowings of property taxes and redirecting $2 billion in redevelopment funds. This ballot measure would employ a variety of different methods to protect local funds, including preventing the state from borrowing property taxes, which include redevelopment agency tax increment financing. It would prevent the state from accessing transportation program accounts funded by the gas tax. And in addition, the ballot measure would protect locally imposed taxes and would require the state to pay back funds the courts have ruled that it owes local governments. The city's portion of recent takings include approximately $40 million in gas taxes and $85 million in redevelopment funds, the majority of which are due in May. The California Redevelopment Association is in litigation to prevent the transfer of redevelopment funds. And state law allows the legislature to borrow property taxes and access local funds in fiscal emergencies. However, California League of Cities advises that the recent takings were unjustified as they were used to cover structural budget problems. Adoption of Resolution Garcetti-Cardenas would align the city in the position of support of the ballot measure, and the Department of Transportation and CRA-LA are in support.
Okay. Yes, the state legislature is notorious for holding back or borrowing $2 billion here, $2 billion there, and they've gotten more aggressive about it. Unfortunately, they always promise not to do so next time, and then when next time comes, they do it again. So really the only true protection is to change the law so that they cannot access those funds and they cannot take such actions. So, any questions from the committee? No. Okay. All right. With that, we are on item number 15. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 15? Any legislative members present who'd like to speak? Seeing and hearing none, seeing no cards before me, public comment is closed on that item. And with that is the action of the committee to approve the CLA report. We now move to item 16.
And item 16 is a CLA report and a resolution relative to the city's position on S-281, COLE, the Healthcare and Training for Older Workers Act.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. Again, this is a federal bill that we had identified and shared with the departments. The Department of Human Services determined that Senate Bill 281, the Health Care and Training for Older Americans Act, would extend COBRA health insurance from the time of retirement, age 62 plus, until seniors become eligible for Medicare at age 65. And it would also improve access to federally funded job training programs under the Workforce Investment Act. As such, in reviewing the department's report, we've analyzed the bill and recommend support of this bill. We've prepared a resolution and recommend your adoption of that resolution into our legislative program. Shireen Buckman with the department is here to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. Seeing no questions from the committee, we're on item number 16. It's now open for public comment. Is anybody here for public comment on item number 16? do not have any cards before me on public comment on item number 16. Public comment on item number 16 is now closed. So with that, it is the action of this committee to adopt the CLA, approve the CLA report. Did you want to say anything? You want to talk us out of it? I didn't think so.
No. I just briefly wanted to say that we support this bill because of the work that we do.
Who are you? Yes, state your name for the record.
Oh, my name is Shireen Buckman. I'm with the Human Services Department. And the Human Services Department supports S-281 because it speaks to our work advocating for marginalized and disenfranchised communities. And there are particular provisions that do enumerate older Americans who are in those populations, such as ex-offenders, homeless individuals, people with limited English proficiency, people with limited literacy skills. So we believe that this bill will go a long way towards helping Angelenos and Americans who are considered, or perceived as unemployable. So we thank you for supporting this.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll be consistent with our vote. Thank you very much. And we're now on item number 17.
And item number 17 was taken on consent as a receive and file.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. We move to item number 19.
Item 18.
What did 18?
And item number 19 is a discussion of the Department of General Services proposed 2010-11 budget, impact of the early retirement incentive program, and planned restructuring of department operations, and strategies for filling positions given the city hiring freeze and bargaining agreements requiring employees to agree to transfers to positions in other units.
Good afternoon. I'm Val Meloff, Assistant General Manager over Administration and Facilities. And would you like me to talk a little bit about what the ERIP impacts are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the Department of General Services has 2,074 budgeted positions. ERIP is going to cost us about 204 positions, and we're currently carrying about 112 vacancies. In terms of the impact of ERIP, we've lost about 13% of our workforce to the early retirement program. We had about 220 applicants, as I said. And the major impacts are primarily in the area of building services, supply services, fleet, and asset management. In terms of let's start with fleet. Fleet supports most of our council-controlled fleet in terms of, I'm sorry, you know what, I just got a little screwed up.
Purchase and maintenance of the fleet
Right.
falls within the jurisdiction of General Services, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And also, when it comes to the portfolio of real estate, how many parcels do we have that GSD has to track, maintain, and/or fall within their jurisdiction?
I'm going to ask David Pascal to join us. He's our Assistant General Manager over Asset Management.
Okay.
Good afternoon. David Pascal from the Department of General Services. We manage 950 facilities that provide services to the residents of this city, and those facilities are occupied by all of the departments and divisions throughout the city, and they're scattered obviously throughout the city, and it's a total of about 16 million square feet. We also, though, have responsibility for a number of lease facilities, and we also have some responsibility for about 110 city-owned facilities that are occupied by nonprofits.
Now, how many parcels or separate pieces of property fall within the jurisdiction of General Services having to maintain and/or track and/or make sure that we are we acknowledge the fact that we own those properties?
Well, essentially, I would have to tell you that there's approximately about 1,200 total properties. I'd have to address it as properties rather than parcels.
Okay, so 1,200 separate properties. Okay, and have we taken the time to have an estimated value of all of our properties that are under your jurisdiction?
We have not performed a Class C or a Class A appraisal on all of the properties that are in the real estate portfolio that's managed by the Asset Management Division. When we do develop Class Cs or Class As, it's because we're probably in the process with council approval of selling a piece of property that is now surplus to our needs. But I would say, to answer your question, we obviously manage a multi-billion-dollar real estate portfolio.
Now, when it comes to that real estate portfolio, whose responsibility is it to know the answers to the questions should the policy makers of the city want to know a particular value of a particular property, or whether or not a particular property should or could be considered surplus and therefore sold?
Well, the key to answering that last question is that no property in the city can be determined surplus without the approval of the council member whose district that property lies in. That's the key to selling surplus property. But on the other hand, if you do want an appraisal of property, we have staff in the Asset Management Division that can develop a Class C appraisal. But we also outsource the Class A appraisals, and we have 3 or 4 different firms that specialize in commercial real estate. And when we're going to do an acquisition or we're going to sell surplus property, we always have those companies perform a Class A appraisal.
What's the difference between a Class C and a Class A appraisal?
I probably ought to bring my staff up, but let me take a shot at it. A Class C appraisal normally is a comparison with similar properties that have recently been sold that are contiguous to the property we're interested in. A Class A appraisal is a much more in-depth analysis of the specific property that we're either interested in buying or selling, and it goes into far greater detail, and it's more of an empirical kind of an analysis rather than just comparing the values of properties that have been sold contiguous to the property that we're looking at.
So a Class C gets us close to understanding what that property is worth, but a Class A is a much more accurate, most likely something more reliable as far as us making a decision of purchasing or selling or knowing the value of that property.
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay. How is ERIP affecting the department's ability, for example, in this area of maintaining and or managing our properties?
Well, we're scheduled to lose about 4 staff people in the Asset Management Division, and I started some time ago working with the director of the Asset Management Division as well as our general manager in discussing what approach would be taken. We've identified staff in that division that we believe can assume those responsibilities, and so we're very comfortable moving forward with the existing structure that we have in place.
You're losing 4, which means you'll be left with how many?
We currently have, I think, 24, and it'll go down to about 20.
Okay. And when it comes to the department as a whole, what areas are most, we're receiving the most impact when it comes to ERIP?
Our fleet division, there we're going to have 54 retirements on top of 21 vacancies. The next area would be our Supply Services Division, where we're going to have 29 retirements. Building Maintenance, where we're going to have 22 retirements.
Now, in those 3 categories that you just mentioned, how many of those positions are either technical or specialized positions?
I'm not sure if you could elaborate what you mean by technical. They're all sort of, they're crafts positions.
Mechanic.
Yes.
Right?
Most of them.
Somebody decides to take ERIP and they're a mechanic.
Most of them are
mechanics.
mechanics.
Vacancies with our mechanics. The city's not likely to, say in another department, you have a janitor and they have a lot of seniority in the city. and they say, well, I wouldn't mind working as a mechanic for the city, it doesn't mean just because they want to, that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to fill that position with an existing city employee, right?
Right.
That's what I call a specialty position, something where somebody has received either certificates and/or mastered certain skills that are specific to that responsibility, and it might even come into a life, fire, life, and safety issue. For example, if somebody is working on our fleet services and they're in charge of working on our trash trucks, not every mechanic can work on a trash truck.
That's correct.
You probably need certain certificates. You probably had to go to school under particular vehicles that we actually own and operate in order for you to be able to work effectively on those trash trucks. That's what I mean by specialty.
Okay. Of the areas that I just mentioned, fleet is the most specialized area. Many of those positions require special training, particularly the ones that you just mentioned that work on our trash trucks and on our alternative fuel vehicles. And do you know how many of those are?
Any other areas where we're going to be affected, perhaps deeply by ERIP within GSD?
Well, the entire department is affected. We basically we're going to lose about 17% of our supervisors. So we have a major brain drain that's going to occur.
Wow.
Yeah, and we basically had to take a look at everything that we do, define what our core functions are, and reorganize as best we can to address those functions based on what we know today, and start developing strategies for looking at how we're going to fill the holes. We just started a process to develop a new strategic plan so that we're looking 3 to 4 years down the road and trying to figure out how to resolve the problems that we're dealing with. Virtually all of the divisions are looking at the question of what services could be contracted out if we're not going to be able to replace the positions that we lost. We're looking at the possibility of using 90-day contracts, part-time employees. In some divisions like building maintenance and using more hiring hall employees. We're also talking about looking at class duties and maybe working with the personnel department to maybe broaden some of our classes to encompass more duties or to change duties. Expanding transitional or vocational worker training. We're looking at a broad array. I could go on if you want me to, but you're kind of getting the gist of what we're up against and looking at.
So it sounds like the department's going to have to do a lot of rearranging and a lot of reinvention within itself, but with a resource that is not available to you, which is bodies.
Correct.
By and large.
Right. It's not unique to just GSD. I mean, I think every department is going through a similar process.
Well, if I were you, I'd worry about yourself. I appreciate the comments, but trust me, seldom am I going to hear departments feeling bad for other departments throughout this process. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think most policymakers understand the position GSD has within the city and the vast array of responsibilities that they have that, quite frankly, no other department really wants. So GSD isn't the kind of department that it's going to be absorbed by another department. GSD, most of its responsibilities are not going to be transferred or absorbed by other departments. GSD is stuck with it.
Right.
Stuck with it less bodies, stuck with it without having resources to reinvent itself. So I'm concerned about how the department is going to actually move forward and still maintain the level of service that we expect of the department. How do you plan on doing that?
Well, I think that, we have to be realistic about this and that the level of service is going to change. In fact, our general manager issued a memo a while back just talking about some changes in various divisions. fact that we're no longer doing desk side trash pickup every day, that we've had to close warehouses, that we're eliminating night shifts in the fleet, that we're making all kinds of changes to accommodate this. And one of the things that we need to do is to understand how ERIP is impacting our major customers like sanitation, Department of Transportation, and try to renegotiate with them, particularly when it comes to fleet and availability rates, what's going to be realistic in this post-ERIP environment that we're going to move into, so that we can supply services at a reduced level, but at a level that's good enough to keep them going.
So within the department, you're having to struggle with identifying what the department's core mission is and what the department's core responsibilities are to the city. Just like the city's having to decide which departments or which functions, which services are we rendering to the people of Los Angeles, and having to prioritize within within the city itself.
Right. Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Jason with the CEO's office. For your discussion tomorrow at council, one of the reports that our office has released is the 3-year plan to sustainability. And in that, what you will see is many of the study areas that we've been working on. So for example, GSD, we had 3 specific study areas, one on asset management, fleet, and publishing. And we also have some ideas on ITA issues. So we have many of these ideas that will be discussed tomorrow, and they'll be all vetted out through the process.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions from the committee, is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 19? Yeah. Okay. We're on item number 19. Public comment is open. Seeing no one come forward, public comment is closed on item number 19. That was our verbal report to the committee. No action required. We now move to item number 20.
And item number 20 is a discussion of the Information Technology Agency's proposed 2010-11 budget, the impact of ERIP, and the planned restructuring of department operations, and strategies for filling positions given the city hiring freeze and bargaining agreements that require employees to agree to transfers to positions in other units.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by putting things in a little bit of a perspective. The ITA department have the responsibilities that have been imposed on this department, have they been going up, or have you been moving responsibilities away from your department where other departments or the city as a whole are taking care of those responsibilities elsewhere?
No, Randy Levin, General Manager of ITA, our responsibilities have been increasing.
Okay. For example, have departments in the past tried to take care of their own IT responsibilities and we've consolidated them back to or within ITA's responsibility over the last few years?
It's shifting more towards us taking more responsibility.
Okay. Small departments, medium departments, large departments, we're taking on, the ITA department's taking on more of those responsibilities that otherwise may have been either ignored and or addressed elsewhere, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, that being the case, over the last few years, has the ITA department's budget increased or decreased?
Decreased.
Okay. So your workload has been going up.
Correct.
And the amount of financial resources allotted to your department has been going down.
The budget has decreased 20% over 5 years.
20% over 5 years, what annual dollar amount is it today compared to 5 years ago?
Mark Wolf, Executive Officer with ITA. That's a $23 million drop over the past 5 years.
So 5 years ago, you were working with $23 million more in 1 year that you're dealing with in this year?
Yes.
So what is the amount that we've left you with in this budget year?
Approximately $90 million.
$90 million. So you went from about $113 million with less responsibility to $90 million with more responsibility.
Correct.
Okay. When it comes to your department, do you have any specialized individuals within your department, specialized when it comes to certain certificates, degrees, knowledge, certain types of systems that very few people may,
We have more specialized than generalists.
you have more specialists than generalists in
Correct.
the department?
Mhm.
Okay. How do we compete when it comes to the market and being able to garner and employ these specialists? Do we do very well? We're the place where most of these specialists end up wanting to go? Do they wait in line to work for us? Or do we tend to have to struggle to keep them? Or do we tend to have to struggle to compete for them?
It's the whole human resource aspect of IT is complicated. We certainly would like to have more new graduates that have more newer technology skill sets, which we don't have. We have a large population of people that are retiring that have older skill sets, but some that we still need to retain because we still need to run those systems. Some of the staff that we have make more in the city than they would outside in the marketplace, and then there are some that are reversed.
Okay. Are we losing any of your specialized personnel to any other city-owned entities?
Will we continue to lose staff primarily to Department of Water and Power?
And how about to the airport, the other proprietor?
Some to the airport,
And the port?
few,
Okay.
but yes,
So the biggest culprit when it comes to people leaving and going across the street is really DWP?
correct.
Okay. And do they leave because they don't like their managers here, or do they leave perhaps motivated by other things, such as pay?
They leave because they can take a reduction in their class and actually make more money at Department of Water and Power and not get furloughed.
You mean they can actually, instead of making a lateral movement, they actually go to DWP, go at supposedly at a level that's less, but get paid more?
Correct.
Can you become a councilman?
All right. So is that a minor issue of losing these bodies, or is that becoming a bigger and bigger issue when it comes to being able to handle the workload that you're left with the bodies you're left with?
It's becoming a huge issue. We had, 5 years ago, we had 760 staff, and now we're projecting after ERIP and after potential layoffs and continued attrition that we're going to be down to about 550. That's about a 28% reduction in staffing.
Again, with more responsibilities.
Yes.
In this current budget year, were you relieved of any responsibilities to speak of? I mean, there might be some minor little details, but I'm saying overall, were you was it a net increase in this budget year of responsibilities or a net decrease in responsibilities?
It was not a net decrease. It was the same.
It was the same?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but not a net increase?
Well, in some cases, a net increase, because what's happening
That's
is...
what I'm saying, overall.
Overall, it's a net increase because we are picking up work from the other departments.
And you are now?
Yes.
Okay. And are those departments sending you bodies to fulfill that work, or the work is coming but not extra bodies?
The work is coming and not extra bodies, because they're also hurting.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that the size and scale of our entire hardware and software environment is not changing. I mean, the resources are being reduced in order to maintain all of these things, but still in all, we still have to maintain the, over 500 servers we have, 1,200 applications, 5 radio systems, 1 microwave system. We have telecommunications to 3,000 locations, et cetera, et cetera. And I can tell you that we are, we're team players. We are, but we're deeply concerned that we're going to negatively impact public safety and some of the other areas of the city that are very critical. And I mean, I think at this point we need to be viewed almost like a utility. ITA is a utility, just like water and electricity, because people have come to rely upon us and rely upon technology as an integral part of their job. And so to the extent that we, continue to cut, but still need to maintain this portfolio of equipment and applications, and they do get older, and we don't have money to swap in and swap out and do some of the other things that we need to do, it just puts an additional burden on the department.
So older systems, do they tend to require more personnel hours to
Correct.
maintain than your average newer system?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So that's another burden on the department. Less bodies, more responsibilities. Systems are getting older because systems cost money, and if we're not allotting enough money to buy a new system or replace an old one, then that means we end up having to have more visits upon that system by our personnel.
Correct.
And when it comes to contracting out some of these responsibilities, are there service providers out there that would gladly like to contract with the city and have some of this stuff contracted out?
Absolutely.
Are they cheap or expensive?
They're competitive.
What do you mean competitive?
It depends what we negotiate with them, but they definitely want the business in the city, and I think that there are a lot of areas where we could save money by contracting out.
But contracting out fits well in certain areas, but not in all.
No, that's a true statement. It's not a one-size-fits-all model.
Is there any reason why we would want to make sure that we maintain a certain level of in-house personnel when it comes to IT versus just bleeding ourselves into a fully dependent third-party contracted out systems?
I think there are certain areas that we do very well in, and we have to actually look at what those areas are and what the impact is. I think particularly when you get into some of the areas within public safety, we have to look very carefully at whether or not an outside firm can provide those services or not. And I can tell you over the past year, particularly radio systems, I really, a year ago, wouldn't have said that there are many providers out there that would be interested in taking over maintenance and running of radio systems, but that's changing now. But we would have to evaluate what that means to the city in terms of service and service levels, as well as cost.
And what's the impact of ERIP on your department?
We had 83 apply, and I think we had a number of rescind in the last week or two, so I think we're 62 was the number, correct?
Yes.
That are E-ripping as we speak.
Many of those technical individuals?
They're primarily technical individuals. Primarily ones that know the older technologies, where we are a little bit more at risk, where we still use those applications or those technologies, in service today.
The consolidation, police department has IT, and many departments have IT. Has there ever been a consideration for consolidation under your department where it can be coordinated? For example, public safety, we discussed the video cameras in police cars, $5 million. It's not working. They've changed the command person in charge. Have we ever looked into that? So these folks that are going to other departments, and maybe some don't have the expertise that your department has, if you're IT, you come under your section, your department, instead of spread throughout the city.
Yes, it's a great question because, last year when we started doing a study of IT consolidation in the city, it was how can we achieve more economies of scale throughout the city, which I believe that still is the case. But now, since ERIP has occurred and there's a potential for more layoffs, it's almost now going to become a survival tactic because we're losing so many skill sets throughout the entire city that to pull them together in one general department where we can more easily allocate resources to technologies that come up is almost going to be a necessary survival tactic for all the city departments.
Because you have over here the mainframe IT, then these different departments have their IT, however they manage it.
Correct.
And I look to IT, information technology, is your department being the expert in it. And while these other departments may not have enough people to make it work, if we would bring those on over under your umbrella, and then you could serve the city in that if someone needs an IT issue, then they go to information technology. But this latest dilemma with the police department, where $5 million, I think it's $5.4 million, and a system that they started talking about in the 90s, and they've been working on it for the last 2 years, it still isn't working.
Yes.
Maybe with the expertise that your department provides with the contractor IBM, maybe it could have been up and operating. Right now, it's still not there.
Right, right.
So that's something else that we should consider on this when we talk about these folks that are moving on to other departments and the lack of personnel to get it done.
Absolutely, but see, there's a fundamental, in my opinion, having been a politician for 13 years now, in the city of Los Angeles, if we moved some of those IT responsibilities to the IT department, it doesn't mean that we would provide this department with the respect and the resources that the police department and the fire department get when they ask and want something.
Well, if this is the only shop in town, then they will, because...
No, they won't. That's the problem. I would love for you to be right. But my point is, when the fire department or the police department say, don't cut our budget, we cut everybody else deeper. And the IT department has been a perfect example of a department that we've been ramping up their responsibilities, yet we've been cutting them as deep, if not deeper, than most other departments. And nobody can say that they're not a critical part of keeping the city functioning and running. As a matter of fact, on your desk and my desk, they're involved. The IT department's involved. I hope I never see the police department come into my office and mill around my desk.
They only do that in a search warrant.
Like I said, I hope they never do, but IT does. They come and visit when my computer goes out or when we have a system change or something like that. They're in my office. I use that as an example. They're everywhere in the city, and every day they have more and more responsibilities, yet at the same time, we don't give them anywhere near the amount of deference and respect when it comes to budgeting that we give the police department.
Well, then...
So that's the only reason why I would be afraid. I agree on a policy basis that we should consolidate all of these things into the IT department and raise the expertise and have them be the end-all or be-all within the city when it comes to this massive, massive expenditure.
If you look at, and it's so fresh from the public safety yesterday, they have a lady who's now running IT in the police department because I guess the other person wasn't running it to get it finished. Same thing happened with the teams too. And I am sure that she's not a general manager. She's the rank of a commanding officer, a deputy chief or whatever, which is a considerable amount of money. She's not doing the nuts and bolts. She's administering, which obviously you would do in your department, and the nuts and bolts will be done by the workers.
Probably at a lower cost.
By the workers in your department. So it's like we have, you're the general manager, you've got other folks in your department that serve in leadership roles, and then you got the worker bees. So what happens is the police department has these general managers, the fire department has general managers doing basically what you're doing. So we're duplicating that role when we need to have more worker bees, which is what this calls for. How do we restructure it?
Right.
I mean, I think maybe that would be a solution to the folks that are leaving other departments and the ones that are going to come to us and say, we don't have enough technicians, we need more people. And you say, well, you know what, give me the people and I'll get the job done. Because I think we should have
give
one.
me the people and give me the job.
And get it done,
We've been missing one half of that equation for several years now. And in my opinion, it's getting to the point where we're going to see the cause and effect of that in a detrimental fashion to the services of the city and the running of entire departments.
Yeah, I agree.
We're going to have to continue.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Randy.
No, you both are absolutely right. We're going to have to continue looking at different delivery models, such as what we're doing with Google. Because running hardware is becoming much more of a commodity, and so we want to make sure that we're using our staff in the most value-added manner possible.
How many servers did you say you have to deal with?
Our department directly has over 500, but we think we've cataloged over 1,200 in the city. They're dispersed.
So you got to go chase those around and make sure they're all working right. I know you and I had a meeting recently to discuss some of these issues, so
yes.
I have an understanding of what the challenge that you have to deal with. But I think that what we have with these other departments, maybe there's 40 departments, they all have IT sections. We need to consolidate that under you and swap those bodies out and then give you the resources. And if someone needs something, they go to IT. I mean, to me, that's the solution to a lot of these issues we're dealing with.
It's getting,
We're piecemealing it, and it doesn't work.
yeah, we're piecemealing it, and we're convoluting our policy making and our budgeting. It's almost like there ought to be a new song saying, if you want to fund it, put a badge on it.
You don't like this anymore, or what?
No, my point is, when you look at the budgeting, the budget year that we're in, and when you look at the deliberations, if you looked at the up to midnight budget deliberations with the budget committee yesterday, these little departments cutting 400,000 here, 400,000 there, 350,000 here, or what have you, and we're ignoring the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is we have a $1.5 billion police department that we avoid even having the discussion of whether or not there are efficiencies there that we can achieve.
Well, if they didn't
If you get a 1% efficiency improvement in that department, you're talking about, what is that, $1.5 billion, was it $10.5 million is 1%, or is it 105? $10.5 million is a 1% efficiency improvement.
Well, the last two major projects,
And we're
Teams
gutting
2,
departments by 20 and 30 and 40 and 50%.
but Teams 2, they didn't get fixed. The video cameras in cars, they didn't get fixed. And whatever else they're dealing with that's not fixed, that we don't know about, that we find out down the road.
Yeah, and we don't pull the plug on them, right? We don't pull the plug on them.
Well, we need to do that.
We don't pull the plug on them, nobody gets reprimanded, you know, people just get shuffled around or what have you, and on goes the expenditure.
That's what they did.
So, but the thing is, this is really frustrating, because I have made a commitment to the people of Los Angeles and as a policymaker for this city. When I was given the responsibility of the chairman of this committee, one of the things that the former mayor, the current mayor, every council member has said is, let's consolidate into IT the responsibilities that are spread out. Let's become more efficient. Let's give them more responsibilities. And yet we're not following through with our commitment of giving them, even, forget about giving you more resources to your department, just giving you the right amount of resources for you to take on those responsibilities, when as policymakers, we sing in harmony that and consistently that that's what we want when it comes to the policy side, but we're very inconsistent when it comes to the budget side.
Well, if, we're on number 20, correct? We're on
Yes.
number 20.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the language under the ERAP, planned restructuring of bureau operations, strategies for filling positions given city hiring freeze, so I would say that we would make a motion on that we would move forward with consolidation of all IT functions citywide under information technology, and we would make that an official record for our motion from this committee.
Sure, with one caveat.
But
Did we, at every move of consolidation, that we assess the required amount of funding that should go along with the responsibilities?
But we can't give you all the duties without the responsibilities, because all these other departments have funding for their IT sections. We could take the funding from the different departments and figure out how much that is, and then say, whatever it is, the proportion number comes.
You're absolutely right. You're being logical.
You can't get everything without the money.
You're being truthful, but at the same time, the actions don't follow through.
Well, then we'll
Actions
make the
don't tend to
motion
follow.
and push it through the council. I mean, that's what we're here for. So I'm going to make that motion. You want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So those are your 500 new bodies.
Let the battle begin.
Well, no, if we're serious about making some changes, then that, I was very logical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And such a motion should be introduced at council,
Okay.
since this is a discussion
Then
item in committee.
We'll draw it up and introduce it.
But can we take this and then generate this into that motion?
This report.
It's a discussion item only in committee,
Okay.
Yeah.
but you can introduce that motion
All
in
right.
council tomorrow.
That's all? Okay, you guys got it. Okay, great. Okay, that'll so do.
And for the record, that came from the two policymakers, Councilmember Zion, Councilmember Cardenas. It did not come from the department.
They're not opposing it, though.
No. But the thing is, stranger things have happened when people actually speak up and tell the truth around here.
We're talking about bodies and money.
You and I initiated that.
Yes.
Any other comments?
No,
Or was that enough for today?
that was enough, thanks.
Okay. All right. With that, is there anybody here to speak on item number 20? We're on item number 20. I do not have any public comment cards on item number 20. So with that, public comment on item number 20 is now closed. It's a non-action item, so we move now to item number 18. Thank you.
And number 18 is a discussion of the Office of the City Clerk's proposed 2010-11 budget, impact of ERIP, and planned restructuring of operations, and strategies for filling positions given the city hiring freeze and bargaining agreements that require employees to agree to transfers to positions in other units.
Good afternoon. Holly Walcott with the Office of the City Clerk. Some of the other departments have started out with what their cuts have been over the last year. We experienced a 19% budget cut this year going into 2009, 2010. With the impact of vacancies, ERIP, and the projected layoffs, we are facing a 31% reduction in the number of employees.
31%. Is that due to the budgeting alone, or is that a combination of the budget actions and the vacancies?
That's vacancies, ERIP, and if the layoffs occur, as projected as proposed by the CAO's FSR.
How many bodies total before the 31% reduction?
We're currently authorized for 142 positions, and 22 are vacant. This includes 10 that have already left via ERIP or that may leave in February. Another 13 are scheduled to leave via ERIP, and the CAO has recommended 10 positions for layoff in the FSR in our Creative Services Division, Land Records Division, and Council on Public Services Division. If approved, this will result in 99 filled positions.
So ERIP affected how many bodies?
24.
24. And then the recommendation is 10 more?
Correct. Actually, I think it's 22 ERIP. Somebody just rescinded, so it's 23 ERIP.
23.
23.
And are you still going to be here?
I will still be here. I have another 10 years, sir.
Okay.
But I'm not counting.
Serve the time.
How many days?
Yeah.
Counting the days.
So if you would like to know a little bit more about the ERIP impact, we are concerned about the ERIP on each one of our divisions. I'll try and keep it brief. Administrative Services Division, the key concern we have there is we serve the 600 to 700 employees of the mayor, city council, city clerk, and CLA in personnel, payroll, and accounting. And 3 positions of our 5 personnel positions are slated to go via ERIP. So that is a payroll clerk, a payroll supervisor, and the personnel director. I can move clerical staff in to do payroll. We stand committed to payroll. Is getting the payroll out is one of the most important things we do every day. But what I can't backfill or move people around to do is the personnel director's job or the personnel or the supervisor, the payroll supervisor's job. I don't have the skill set, and I just don't have the bodies to do it. So if they are not allowed to be backfilled, we will continue to provide payroll, but we won't be able to provide other personnel services.
Now, who do you provide personnel services for again?
The mayor, city council, CLA, and the city clerk.
And how many bodies is that?
600 to 700. It varies depending on how many.
700?
Uh-huh. It varies depending on the number that are employed by council or mayor. Systems is operating with 5 vacancies currently. The 8 remaining positions largely support the election efforts and council and public services. Our records management division, after ERIP, records management will have 3 positions. Currently, they have 6 positions authorized, but they will have 3 positions filled. Currently, right now, we close down one Friday a pay period, and we may have to reevaluate to see if we have to close down more days if we only have 3 employees left. Elections, there are no vacancies in our elections division. Creative services, there are currently 5 filled positions in creative services. Last year there were 8, but 2 positions were deleted, and incumbents left via ERIP, and 1 employee was terminated for cause. If the CAO's recommendations for ERIP, the FSR are approved, all 5 positions will be laid off, and the city clerk will no longer be able to provide the scrolls and creative services. In Council and Public Services, there are 38 authorized positions in this division and 9 vacancies. 8 are due to ERIP. There's a Chief Management Analyst vacancy, and as of February 13th, there will be no Senior Management Analysts, 2 left in the division, so we will not have any supervising positions in Council and Public Services, and that also goes for Administrative Services and Creative Services, since we don't have a Chief, Senior MA, or Senior MA2 left in those divisions. In Land Records has also been badly hit. In 2008-2009, the Land Records Division had 17 positions. This was reduced to 14 in this year's budget. Of the 14, 6 have filed for ERIP, and the CAO has recommended the layoff of 4 additional positions, which will leave us with 4 positions to try and do this function.
But how many positions ideally should you have to provide those functions?
In Land Records specifically?
Yes.
Well, we've been behind in our data entry of property ownership for many years.
And
So-
how many bodies did you have and you were still behind?
We had 17. At
You had
18,
17 and you were behind, and you're going to go down to 4?
right, well, we'll have to change what we do. We'll have to change and provide only that which is mandated by state law. This will likely deteriorate LUPAMs, which is the property ownership information. What is state mandated is lot splits. Each municipality has to regulate their own lot line adjustments. And we have to determine whether or not we can do that with 4 employees. That analysis has not taken place yet. Or we also have to talk with Bureau of Engineering and Building and Safety Planning to see, what it is we can do as a city family to try and solve this problem.
And what's the CAO's answer to you when you say, how do you expect me to do the work of 17 or more people with 4 bodies?
In their defense, I think they had 24 hours to come up with 1,000 cuts. I mean, I don't know that there was any significant analysis that took place citywide.
Again, I warn you, don't feel sorry for others. Tell me about your perspective.
I don't have the answer to your question.
So that dialogue didn't take place with CAO as far as you're aware of?
What we recommended was that we feel that we are at a point now where you have to decide you're either going to do the entire function or you're not going to do the function at all. And our recommendation was to not do the function at all. If we're down to 6 positions, of the 14, we have 14 authorized and 6 are going to leave, we didn't feel like we could do it with 8. But that would have still left a problem on the table to be solved of what do you do with the state mandate. I believe the answer to the question is probably there's about 100 to 200 lot splits a year that you could probably do that with 4 employees. The problem with that is you have to go through some 200,000 records to get there. It's a needle in a haystack. We receive about 200,000 updates a year from the county to our property ownership records. There's about 900,000 properties, so we update about 200,000 a year. Of those, 40% are updated electronically because everything just matches from system to system perfectly. Of the remaining 60%, some of those are just because there were multiple owners or because the property owner does not match the tax owner. So some type of research has to be done in order for those records to be updated. That accounts for 45 of the 60%. The remaining 15%, there was some change probably to the lot line. And that's what has to be looked at to see if they were legal or illegal lot splits. And there's about 100 to 200 a year that are illegal. And that's what we're looking for. And that impacts Building and Safety's ability to issue permits. And I know there's a planning function that's impacted, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's clearly an issue we have to sit down and resolve that's not resolved yet.
quite a dilemma.
Your presentation should be a good reminder to the policymakers of this city that we speak rhetorically about reducing the personnel down to our core priorities. But one of the things that politicians tend to forget, there's probably not a constituent out there, except maybe about 3 or 4 that come and talk to council committees all the time. There's probably, other than those 4 people in the city of Los Angeles, there's probably not another constituent out there that even understands that you do have core functions, that we have laws that we have to adhere to, we have responsibilities that we have to adhere to, and that your department, the city clerk's office, has some of those responsibilities. But the only thing the public sees is, I want to make sure we have all the firefighters I would like. I want to make sure I have all the police officers I would like. I want to make sure that my local park, not all the parks, but my local park, the ones that I take my kids to or I go to play softball or basketball, that my local park is maintained and is still available to me. That is, in my opinion, all too often the majority of the mindset of our constituency in this city. And the fact of the matter is, as policymakers, we have to stop allowing ourselves to fall into that trap of telling our constituents, yes, you're right, I'm going to keep all the core functions that you want me to keep, and not telling them the truth and saying there are a lot of other functions that we have no choice, but we have to keep funding, we have to keep those functions going, or else we're in violation of the law. We could be paying penalties that, again, are their tax dollars going off in penalties. We could end up in lawsuits that we end up losing some of their tax dollars and giving a big fat check to somebody because they won the lawsuit. So your department is a perfect example of the hidden responsibilities that we have to figure out a way to fund and maintain.
I certainly agree.
I appreciate you coming forward, and please tell your boss that thank you for sending you, because they sent the right person in this case.
Thank you.
You've been very thorough, and you painted the picture very accurately, and you're able to answer my questions. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a professional. No other questions? Okay, with that, we're on item number 18. The public comment is open on item number 18. Seeing no one come forward, I do not have any public comment cards on 18. Public comment is closed. No action required on this item. Thank you very much. We're going to now open it up to general public comment. Is there anybody here for general public comment before we go into closed session? Is anybody here for general public comment? General public comment is open at this time. Seeing no one come forward, general public comment is closed at this time. You don't have any general public comment? Okay. We're going to go into closed session, so we're going to excuse everybody from the room, all members of the public, people who are not responsible for being part of the discussion within the city staff on closed session. I'm sorry, please vacate the room. We're going into closed session. Thank you. We're going into closed session on items 21, 22, and 23. So with that concludes the items on today's agenda. And with that, this committee is now adjourned.